Clipping of coins, just some examples. Currency, I mentioned it goes back many years. In the olden days, coins used to have hammered edges, and people used to sort of clip off bits of silver from the edge of those coins to create their own eventually when they had enough silver. And putting a milled edge on that was simply a way of stopping that problem. What we have in banknotes is obviously much more technically sophisticated these days, but the whole business about currency goes back right until from the very beginnings of currency. This is an interesting example of stamps and franking ink. The penny black was introduced. Because it was black, they had to use red franking ink. Red franking ink could be washed off. It was water soluble. So they found the penny black, these stamps being used time and time again. Couldn't have that, so introduced the penny red, because then you could use the black indelible inking, franking ink. And it's another example of using, trying to catch up with the materials and science. This is what I mean by image and media. Oscar Newman, who was famous for developing the concept of defensible space, was very concerned about this issue, and it's the way in which materials are used in public housing at the time. Obviously, these materials are there to make these areas much more serviceable and manageable, but in doing that, they give across an image of, you know, it doesn't really matter what happens here. And that's another way in which materials can influence criminal behavior and antisocial behavior. And this is an example of, you know, screens being used, I think, inappropriately here, of materials being used to control a problem of aggression from these are housing benefit officers. Screens are used to stop, you know, housing benefit claimants from getting aggressive and spitting and attacking staff on the other side. They're not appropriate because often very complex and personal conversations have to be had. And what those screens do is provoke violence, not create it. So for me, this begins to raise the issue of the sort of interaction between materials, design, and management, which is quite a complex one, I know. Innovation can create new opportunities, can create new opportunities for crime, and materials, I think, have a role in this. In, you know, the new kind of building and construction materials that enabled Le Corbusier, for example, to start building this kind of city. This is a drawing from 1923. Just illustrates how the combination of that material and his design thinking created an environment which we all know now doesn't work at all in the public sector. It works in the private sector because you can afford to solve the problems through private security, but it doesn't work in the public sector. Cars in the 50s, this is when the phenomenon of joyriding really took off in the UK, and it coincided with the introduction of these kind of sporty model cars. And, you know, I'm guessing here, but I guess that, you know, new technological kind of innovations in brakes and tyres and materials and so on enables designers to be putting together that sort of product. And that drives then new crime waves. So I don't know, in that sort of context, where you've got that complex interaction of designers, materials, where material scientists have any leverage. My guess is you don't, because what's happening is designers are picking up a product that you've created. But currently, the issue for us is the new kind of green agenda, which is encouraging new materials to be used in housing, yeah, I know there are some concerns already about those materials being strong enough to withstand forced entry into houses, for example. And I know from the counter-terrorist point of view, concerns about the use of glazing in new developments, commonly known as crowded places, and the effect of those if a bomb was activated. So again, we need to be thinking about crime prevention in all of that work. Okay, I want to finish just with an example which, this is an example that we use a lot to demonstrate the point that reducing crime by reducing opportunities doesn't simply move the crime from one place to another. And it's an interesting example because I think this is an example of how material, in this case gas, reduced suicides. And the bottom line shows the number of suicides by gassing, essentially sticking your head in a gas oven, and which went down when North Sea gas and the toxins were taken out of gas. And it was obviously not possible to kill yourself through gassing. The top line shows total suicides, and if people were finding other ways of trying to kill themselves because they couldn't do it with gas anymore, that top line would be flat, but it came down as well. So it's an interesting example, I think, of how, in this case, removing the toxins from a particular material, in this case gas, reduced the problem and didn't displace it to other forms of crime, or other forms of suicide in this case.